Hello and welcome to Another Day, Another Evil. I'm your host Georgina.
And I'm Melissa, and this week it's my turn to tell you a case. Today, if you're listening to this on the day of release, it is the 30th anniversary of the murder of Irish investigative journalist Veronica Guerin, who was shot to death in broad daylight for daring to expose the criminal underworld, one which the Irish police, the Guardi, were not equipped or not wanting to deal with. Veronica's murder led to public outcry, and the government swiftly set up the Criminal Assets Bureau in order to tackle organised crime. Many arrests were made and a couple of convictions in her murder, but I'll leave it up to you to decide whether justice was done.
I'm sure you'll hear our input.
Yeah. Veronica Guerin was born on the 5th of July 1958 in Dublin, Ireland. Some sources say she was born in 1959 and others say she was born in 1958, but her brother, Jimmy, had said that she'd made herself a year younger so that she was able to vote in an AGM of the youth division of the Fianna Fáil. Anyway, she was the second youngest of 5 children to her parents, and her father worked as an accountant. She loved sports, representing Ireland's national teams in both basketball and football. Her brother Jimmy described her as a bubbly and gregarious teenager, loving to have fun and cause mischief. He said that whilst other girls were out wearing skirts, Veronica was known to wear jeans and play football with the other lads. She was an avid Manchester United fan and was once lucky enough to meet the team, becoming starstruck when she met her favourite player, Eric Cantona. Jimmy remembers his sister as being caring, saying that he wasn't very good at Irish, so Veronica would write up his essays in Irish and then again in English in case he got quizzed by his teachers. Veronica studied accounting at Trinity College in Dublin before transitioning to PR and holding a number of different jobs. She was a member of the political party Fianna Fáil, having joined in her youth, and later served as the personal assistant to leader Charles Hoy in 1983. For anybody who is Irish, I do apologise for my pronunciation, and for anybody who isn't familiar with this person, the spelling of his surname is Haughey. So she served as his personal assistant in 1983 and even became close friends with some of his younger family members. She was described by the other members of the party as being vivacious and friendly and took politics very seriously, voting and campaigning for the party and having a reputation for being fearless in her pursuit of getting things done. On the 21st of September 1985, she married construction worker Graham Churley, and the pair went on to have one son. Veronica pivoted careers again in the early 90s, working first for the Sunday Business Post and the Sunday Tribune before joining the Sunday Independent as a crime reporter in 1994. Her brother Martin said that she was happier than ever before working there and that, quote, she was more relaxed and at ease than she had ever been before. At the time, drugs, particularly heroin, were beginning to flood the streets of Ireland, and organised crime, in the sense that we know it today, was a relatively new concept, and the authorities were struggling to deal with it. Consider how dramatically technology evolved over those years. Organised crime was seizing upon it, using mobile phones, for example, which is something the Guardi just didn't have the knowledge or resources to tackle. There were a number of murders associated with this criminal world, and they were going unchecked. Veronica openly criticised the Guardi and said in an interview in 1995 that she didn't feel that the guards had enough power to deal with the situation and that everything favoured the criminals. She further said that the aims of her pieces were to bring attention of the criminal underworld to the public so that the politicians would then be forced to address the issues. Veronica was passionate about the effects of drugs on the community and saw investigative journalism as a way to tackle the problem and force the powers that be to confront it and make changes. Her friend and colleague, Lise Hand, said that Veronica had a way of attracting people to her. She was able to use these skills to develop contacts both in the Guardi and within the criminal underworld. She used her contacts, financial background, and investigative skills to write a series of profiles exposing these activities and characters, in which she used pseudonyms for them, such as the Monk. And when I say characters, I mean like the people involved in organised crime.
Yeah.
She also reported on some of the IRA attacks which were ongoing at the time, and many people have said that Veronica was quite naive in the pursuit of her story, in the sense that she didn't think that anything bad would happen to her and that there'd be no consequences for doing this kind of reporting.
Which I feel like, as in anything, you kind of do feel like that, don't you?
Yeah.
Like...
And thinking back to the time, the early 90s, this was a woman in kind of like very much a man's world. Investigative journalism in terms of crime was very male dominated. And obviously the criminal underworld, very male dominated. So kind of a couple of people in the kind of documentaries that I watched said that they felt that she was quite naive because she thought that as a woman nobody would.
Yeah, and I guess like that would be supported because like even now in general life, like guys don't hit, like if obviously guys do hit women, but like guys kind of go, I'm not touching her, she's a girl.
Yeah, there's kind of like this unwritten rule, and if you break that rule, you're a bad person.
Yeah.
And I think there is this kind of, you do see it, whether it's in the fictionalised versions of kind of organised crime, but you definitely see it as kind of the women are dealt, like women are treated very differently to the men. So yeah, so quite a few people have called her naive because of her kind of that. So shortly after publishing her profile on the Monk, aka Jerry Hutch, and just to point out that the reason that she used these kind of pseudonyms is because under Irish law you're not allowed to name people. It would be classed as, is it libel or slander, the one where you, so she used these nicknames that weren't like the official nicknames of the criminals. I know obviously we do see that criminals do have nicknames that they kind of have themselves, but this wasn't the case. She just used them for this reason.
Right.
So shortly after publishing her profile on the Monk, who was Jerry Hutch, Veronica was attacked in her home. So on the 30th of January 1995, a man entered Veronica's home and pointed a gun at her head. She later recalled that, quote, "The first thought that I had was that they meant it. I thought, they're going to kill me." She then said how the man had lowered the gun and shot her in the leg. She managed to get to hospital, and when her husband saw her there, he said how casual she seemed. When she was asked whether she would stop reporting, she said that if she could go back in time, she wouldn't have ever gotten into it in the first place, but that now she was involved, it was a job that had to be done. And it was initially thought that this was a warning shot from Hutch, but a report in the Irish Times in 1997 suggested that it was actually a murder attempt gone wrong due to her reports on another criminal, Martin Cahill, who had been killed by the IRA in 1994. And I've found both explanations, and I'm not 100% sure which is true. But regardless, she was shot in the leg by somebody associated with the criminals that she was reporting on. Following the attack, Veronica was issued 24/7 protection by her employers, but she called it off after a few weeks as it was getting in the way of her doing her job. In September 1995, she turned her attention to another criminal, John Gilligan, and confronted him at his home. Gilligan punched her and threatened to kill her and her family and rape her young son. Lee's Hand said how she remembered that Veronica was black and blue following this attack and that she was wearing a neck brace for weeks. Veronica reported this attack, and Gilligan was charged with assault but obviously denied anything, and they were due in court on the 9th of July 1996. On the 26th of June 1996, so just 2 weeks before she was due to appear in court with Gilligan, Veronica had appeared in court on a personal matter in Nass to answer a speeding ticket. Someone who saw and spoke to her at court that day said that she was her usual self and she was only worried about losing her driving licence, but was excited to watch the Euro semi-finals that day. On her way home from court, she was on the N7 Nass Road towards Dublin when she stopped her red Opel Calibra sports car at a traffic light at a junction at around 1 p.m. Two men pulled up alongside her on a motorbike before the passenger pulled out a gun and shot 6 times into the car. Veronica is said to have died instantly. The two men then sped off. Witnesses said that the two were on a white motorbike, both wearing crash helmets, and described one as being, quote, a heavy-set man in his 30s and the other one a smaller man. So, quite vague, not much to go on. Veronica's murder was huge across Ireland, and I've seen it compared in terms of impact on the community at the time to the 9/11 attacks.
Oh wow, so big news.
Yeah. And that everyone in Ireland knew where they were when they heard the news. So obviously that is very, anybody who was around and old enough during the 9/11 attacks can remember kind of that happening. And the Guardi investigation was massive, and once floral tributes began piling up outside Leicester House in Dublin, the government established the Criminal Assets Bureau, which gave the new agency special powers to track and seize assets acquired through organised crime. So I believe Leicester House is one of the government buildings, one of like the main government buildings in Dublin. In case you didn't know or didn't pick that up.
Yeah, I assumed that because at first when you first started saying it, I was like, oh, her house. But then I was like, it kind of makes more sense that it is like a government house.
It was kind of, they saw the impact of her death and were like, shit, we have to do something because we haven't been doing anything and she's been reporting on it and therefore now she's dead.
Yeah.
And following the establishment of the Criminal Assets Bureau, they seized over 100 guns, many of which were linked to other crimes, and millions of pounds, as in the Irish money at the time, worth of drugs.
Wow.
So not the weight of drugs, the cost of drugs. So Ireland's Minister for Justice, Nora Owen, at the time received a lot of hate and was blamed for the death of Veronica. As I mentioned, obviously, the government and the Guardi were not equipped to deal with this, so she obviously, and people, as Veronica was exposing these criminals, people started to realise that they were just getting away with all sorts, so she was obviously criticised a lot. So Owen was attending an international conference at the time of Veronica's death, and then she headed to the UN before she returned to Ireland. She knew Veronica personally and said that she was, quote, wonderfully vivacious, active and full of confidence. Owen went to see Veronica at the funeral home and saw her husband Graham there, who Owen recalled was, quote, extraordinarily generous and strong in the face of such tragedy. So the Guardi launched a massive investigation, interviewing over 130 people, and the state even introduced a witness protection programme for the first time ever for state witnesses. I couldn't actually find much about what was discovered in the investigation. Basically, all the reporting focuses on the changes made and the public outroar which forced them to make them. And then it's like, oh, these people were arrested and charged.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of vague reporting regarding who was charged when and how it all happened, in terms of timelines.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to have to tell you the main suspects and the definitive verdicts pieced together as best I could.
Yeah. They don't make it easy sometimes, do they?
No. Yeah. I think this case was basically just, this is the impact that it had.
Yeah.
So in October 1996, two men who were associated with John Gilligan, so remember that's the kind of one of the crime bosses or one of the organised crime people who was due to be in court after assaulting Veronica.
Right, yeah.
So two men associated with him, Charles Bowden and Russell Warren, were arrested. They agreed to give evidence against him in return for immunity and new identities under the new Witness Protection Programme. And then in November 1998, so 2.5 years after her death, Paul Ward, so a different person, was convicted of her murder and sentenced to life imprisonment for his role of being an accomplice, disposing of the murder weapon and the motorbike. But in 2002, his conviction was overturned on appeal because the judges believed the accomplice who testified against Ward... No. Because the judges believed that the witness who testified against Ward was unreliable and had lied numerous times. But Ward remained in prison on other charges and was then released in 2005.
Okay, so at this point, we don't actually know who murdered her. Paul Ward was just convicted for being an accomplice of it.
Yeah. Okay. He was convicted of murder, though.
Right.
But it was due to his kind of... Yeah, he wasn't convicted as an accomplice to murder, he was convicted of murder. But I'm guessing it was kind of... He played more than just like a... Like, he played like a main role, yes, is their argument.
Right, okay.
But yeah, then his conviction was overturned, so technically not convicted.
Not guilty of murder.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in 1999, Brian Meehan was convicted of Veronica's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment for his role in driving the motorbike. Meehan tried to appeal his sentence, but was rejected by both the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. In December of 2025, Meehan was allowed temporarily out of prison to spend Christmas at home. I can't find whether he's free yet as of the 26th of June 2026, but it'll be out soon if not. He's been allowed out of prison as part of like as he's moving towards getting paroled.
Okay.
But yeah, he was convicted of murder because he was the person driving the motorbike.
Yep.
But it's likely out soon.
Okay.
And Patrick Eugene Holland is the man who is suspected of actually firing the gun and killing Veronica, but he's always denied involvement and he has never been charged.
Okay.
John Gilligan, the crime boss, flew to Amsterdam the day before Veronica was murdered, and he is believed to have orchestrated it. He was arrested in England at Heathrow Airport a year later with over £500,000 of cash in a bag and was charged with money laundering. And in February 2000, he was extradited to Ireland to face charges in relation to Veronica's murder. But in 2001, he was acquitted of all charges. Due to the unreliable and uncorroborated testimony of Russell Warren. So remember, he's one of the associates who agreed to turn witness and to get immunity.
Yep.
In exchange for immunity, I should say. So John Gilligan was sentenced to 28 years on other charges, and then his sentence was reduced on appeal in 2003, and he was freed in 2013 after spending 17 years in prison. So, Veronica's family were obviously upset by the verdicts. They had one conviction. So the only person who has ever been convicted and not had their thing not overturned, is Brian Meehan, so the guy who drove the motorbike.
Yeah.
And he is still potentially in prison now, but he's definitely on the
process of coming out.
Yeah. But her brother Jimmy believes that they actually had enough evidence to convict the rest. So despite all the changes that the Irish government made in relation to organised crime, it still didn't bring any justice for Veronica and her family, in their opinion. And I have to agree. I don't know how you I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think that surely if you've got someone who's suspected of actually shooting the gun, then you have enough evidence to at least charge him with it, surely.
Yeah.
Whether he's then found guilty or anything with the whole justice system is a different matter, but surely if you suspect it, then you've got some sort of evidence to be able to corroborate.
Yeah, well, I did see one documentary that said he was taken to court and was acquitted.
Right.
But I've only seen that in one place. And it's like I say, the information that's out there available freely is limited. In 2003, a film depicting Veronica's life was released, starring Cate Blanchett as Veronica. Jimmy said that he enjoyed it and thought it was about 80% accurate. Veronica's husband, Graham, was of course distraught by her death, but he's remarried in the years since. Her son Cathal, I think it's pronounced Cattle.
Okay.
It's Cathal. Like I said, apologies to anybody who's Irish and very offended by my pronunciation of anything in here.
And the swearing at the phone.
Yeah. So her son Cathal was only 6 when Veronica was murdered. He's obviously grown up now. Speaking in 2016, he said, quote, "My mother never wanted to be a victim. Everything she did was for the benefit. It sounds cheesy, but was for the benefit of the Irish people and the people of Dublin. She wanted better things for those people. She didn't want people to live in fear or to be enslaved by their addiction, and I don't think she went out to purposefully go after specific people. I think if she was covering dodgy politicians, I think she'd go after them just as hard as she went after gangland criminals, you know?" He further went on to say that he did not grow up living with hatred about the situation, as he did not think that that would be true to Veronica's memory. And he now lives in Dubai and has his own child, or children. Couldn't find specifics there, but yeah. As I said at the top of the show, if you're listening on the date of release, today marks 30 years since Veronica's death. And to commemorate, Veronica's family have organised a fundraising event to raise money for the St Francis Hospice, which will go towards building the new inpatient unit there. I'd like to leave you with the words of her sister, Marie Brannigan, who said that Veronica should be remembered as, quote, "very loving, very caring, a wonderful mother, daughter, sister and wife." Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Stay safe.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Make sure you like, follow and leave us a review if you enjoyed it.
All episodes are written and presented by Melissa and Georgina Scara.
Editing is by Vicky Hunter.
All of our sources can be found in our show notes or on our website.
Take care.
Stay safe